Hello, this is Archie Dunlop with Talking Astrology with Archie on Friday, March the 3rd, 2023. Now, I've got some good news. I bought a camera. I don't really know how to use it, but apparently it's going to improve the quality of this picture, which I suppose you hate. You might hate it so much you're never going to visit me again. But anyway, I thought I'd let you know that I am working on the problem. As far as what I'm going to talk about today, I did want to talk about birth times and whether birth times are really important. Do you need to know what time you were born? Does it really matter in terms of astrology? Is the day of birth enough? So I'll be looking at that a bit later. So what I'm going to talk about now is what's going on today, Friday, March the 3rd, 2023, astrologically. So what I do is I set up a chart for New York. New York midday, I mean, that's some sort of mean time. I could set up a time for, I could set it up for a different location, but that's a kind of a place to start. And what I see is the moon just going into Leo, out of Cancer into Leo. Now that's actually quite a big change because the moon works very well in Cancer. Cancer is a sign of the moon's rulership, and it has a dramatic collapse in strength when it moves to Leo. The moon doesn't work well in Leo, and really that kind of makes sense if you think about it, because the moon is a feminine planet. It's traditionally sort of moist and sensitive, perhaps slightly retiring. Then you put it into Leo. Leo is a sign ruled by the sun. Leo is a positive sign. Leo is all about fire. And so when the moon moves into Leo, it kind of gets a bit burnt out. It sort of also feels that it can't really express itself. It might want attention, but it can't get the attention it needs, and is perhaps easily offended and doesn't know quite how to respond. And also traditionally, Leo is one of the barren signs. Now that's quite a terrible thing to say because it relates to fertility. Moon in Leo traditionally is about barrenness. Old astrologers would see the moon in Leo and moon in Virgo. Virgo is another barren sign of being signs, being evidence of infertility. Now, I'm not going to go with that, but you get the idea of something being burnt out. It's all in the public eye. It's getting too much attention. It doesn't have the space to nurture itself. And so today we might feel that moon in Leo. We might feel that we can't really get the attention we need or want, and it's just all too much. And the moon does stay in Leo, so that's going to, that issue is likely to continue. And just before the moon moves into Leo, it is making an opposition to Pluto. So with moon opposition Pluto, that is, moon in the last degree of Cancer, Pluto in the last degree of Capricorn. There's a sense of emotional transformation, and I don't really mean that in a positive sense. It's just all too much, and we're going to be keeping things to ourselves. And so it's not great from an emotional point of view today. I think today could be quite stressful. Another thing going on is a square aspect between Venus and Kronos. I was trying to work out what would that actually mean. Venus is a female planet. Venus is about relationships, and it's making a square to Kronos, which is an aspect of Saturn. Is this a woman in authority? If you're a woman, is it now time to establish yourself and be an authority figure? Perhaps. Another way of looking at it, I was looking at what German astrologer Alfred Witter was saying. He was seeing it in terms of the state and how the state looks after people. Now, that's an interesting view on Venus square Kronos. I mean, Kronos is certainly the state, and Venus is about perhaps charity, kindness, looking after people. And so what might be the case is that today is the struggle to get money out of the government. So if you're owed money by the government or some other government agency, now's the time to get it, or to start the process. It's going to be really difficult. Perhaps you need to make a phone call, and perhaps in the past you've been kept on waiting for half an hour, whatever, and you just think it's just too much effort. Well, today it probably is worth making the effort. If you're owed money, you need to get hold of it, because really the state does want to give you what you're owed, particularly now with Venus making that aspect to Kronos. As far as times of birth, a few days ago I was comparing the charts of Victoria Nuland, that American official in the State Department, who has, I think, caused so much damage in the Ukraine, and the chart of Princess Diana. Now, for Princess Diana, we do have a time of birth, but for Victoria Nuland, we don't have a time of birth. I have to set up a chart for midday. So the question is, do I actually need a time of birth? Well, I do find that if we don't have a time of birth, it's really difficult to be precise. We can't say how things are actually working. So when I talk about Victoria Nuland, I'm half blind, because I don't know. I can't see where on Earth those planets are actually active. Now, some people suggest that you can rectify a chart. So if you don't know what time someone is born, you can reverse engineer things. So what you do is you look at all the events in their life, marriage, education, disasters, triumphs, and you link them with astrological events, and you reverse engineer a time of birth based on what happened to them. And I am absolutely unconvinced by this concept of rectification. I think it's probably a fool's errand, because if you get it wrong, it's like seriously embarrassing. So if you don't have a time of birth, you need to basically move heaven and earth to find it if you want to get your chart done, or if you want to do anything really of any value with astrology. And there are all sorts of ways of finding your time of birth. Hospitals sometimes have records. Your birth certificate might say. That depends where you're born. In England, there is no time of birth on a birth certificate unless you're a twin. In Scotland, they do give a time of birth. In France and Germany, they're usually pretty good. So always look for your time of birth. And if the hospital's no good, if your birth certificate doesn't tell you, talk to your relatives. You might find something interesting. In my own case, I always thought that I was born at 3:30 in the morning. That was my view until a few years ago, when I got some papers. My mother had just died, and I got this little tag from the hospital where I was born all those decades ago, and it said 3:35. So I'd been under this impression throughout my entire astrological career that I was born at 3:30, and in fact I was born 5 minutes later. And that did make a difference. I mean, a small difference, but it did make a difference that was certainly worth noting. It made my horoscope that much more depressive. So that's why we need to know our time of birth. Anyway, that's all I've got to say, and I will see you tomorrow.